My third time recording this video, but I was thinking about it and I thought this would be a really interesting story to share about my deadlifting story and how right now I deadlift about 500 pounds. And if you told the average person on the street that you could deadlift 500 pounds, they'll be astounded. They will definitely recognize that's no easy feat and they'll recognize the strength behind it. But, as someone who's been in powerlifting before and has knowledge of the powerlifting world, 500 is honestly just almost the beginning. If you take powerlifting seriously, especially if you compete, you're expected to go in numbers far higher, like 600, 700. And if you do PEDs and other enhancements, perhaps even 800 and beyond, right? And, you know, the reason I mentioned this story is because I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned here, right? So before I delve further into the story, let me talk about how I started deadlifting. So I've always been interested in deadlifting ever since I was in college as a freshman year in university. But I really took it seriously 3 years ago in my senior year in university when I started to lose weight. But at the same time, I was fascinated by deadlifting because lifting dead weight off the floor was kind of symbolic to rising up in spite of all the issues that one person can have in life. And I remember in January 2022, I could barely lift 315 off the floor without some serious back pain because I'd always arc my back and my form was terrible, right? And I remember one time I went to my university gym and there was a guy named Sam there. And Sam was just a Chad, right? I started deadlifting side by side with him and we worked together on one, two, and three plates. And he took his time to kindly show me the correct form on how to sumo stance, right? And because of him, I was able to go from doing 315 to 365 the same day. Because now that I had the technique, I could actually lift the weight off the floor, right? But the thing is, it was coincidentally the same day that Sam was also deadlifting 600 pounds as a PR. And I remember when Sam was lifting it, everyone was like looking at him, right? Everyone was had their phone on and he was slowly lifting the weight off the ground. And I think he did like a soft lockout before he dropped the weight, but dude was built. I think he was in the Navy or Marines before and he was athletic. He was just a Chad, right? So ever since that day where I learned the proper form, I would start going to the gym every single day and deadlifting. And I remember one night, there was a guy who insulted me online, and I was obviously really pissed and angry about that. And for 2 months after that point, I was trying to deadlift 405 pounds, but to no avail. And that night, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna show him. I'm gonna show everyone else that I could do it. So I went to the gym. First plate done. Second plate done. Third plate done. And even 365, 385 done. And I remember, as I lifted the four plates, as I put four plates on it, I didn't lift it, but I put four plates on it. It was like the rage started like dying down in my heart. Like it was like the anger, like the boost from that slowly died down. And I remember feeling doubt as I went to the bar. And I tried lifting it, but I couldn't. And not only did I try not once, not twice, not thrice, but I did it 5 separate times and I couldn't lift it at all. And if you guys ever watched the first movie back in 2011, it's kind of that scene where like Thor beats all the agent shields and then he goes to the center where his Mjolnir is and he tries to lift it with one arm, right? And he can't do it. Then he tries to lift it with two arms and he can't do it. Then he tries to lift with all of his might and he still cannot do it, right? And it's just, he ends up being so disappointed that he can't lift it. And just like him, I went home feeling disappointed, weak, and that I just failed, right? But I kept going, and eventually, a few weeks later, I did break the 405 plateau. I first did it with sumo, and then I eventually did it with conventional. And with conventional, it was still bad form, but marginally better than how I started at the beginning of the year, where I would literally feel back-breaking pain every time I did 315. And what ended up happening was as the summer came, I would hit higher numbers like 425, 435. And I remember even at our local Blink Fitness here in Harlem, I lifted 455 with a dress shirt and tight pants. Albeit it was a struggle, but eventually I did it, right? And what ended up happening was I had to travel afterwards to Morocco and Turkey for 2 months. So obviously I didn't deadlift during that time. I lost some strength. And by the time I came back, I had to engage in the process again. And not before long, I was able to get 4 plates back, and then I went back to like that 455 baseline. And what ended up happening was that I was still deadlifting, right? I started following a powerlifting coach and routine, and I still did it. And I remember towards the end of the year, I started thinking, what if I could do 500? And now 500 sounds insane because that's a 50-pound jump from 455. But I was just like, let me just try it anyways. So I tried it, and at first I tried 475, and it went up quicker than I thought. And this was in December, like 4 months after I came back from Morocco and Turkey. And I was like, okay, 475 felt simple for that weight. What if I just make the jump to do 500 pounds? And I remember 2 days later, I was just like, let's do it. So the person I was talking to at the time, she came with me to the gym, and we got the camera up as I was setting up the bar with the 5 plates. And it looked like a monstrous weight. I felt the metal, I felt the weight, I felt just how heavy it was. And it was like, oh my God, am I actually gonna try doing this? And I remember she took the phone out, and I was like, it's either now or never. And 10 seconds later, I did indeed lift the weight. And my face was so crunched up at the time. You could literally see my jawline like flaring as I was doing it. And I was just so locked in, right? And I remember dropping the weight like an idiot because I thought it was a cool thing to do to make noise every time I did a PR. And, ever since then, I've always fluctuated between 400 and 500 pounds. My max was 525 ever, but I never really went to higher numbers after that. And the reason why I mentioned this story is because deadlifting, like anything in life, is a process. And if you are focused on just the outcome, you're gonna reach one of two things. You're either never gonna get the goal you originally wanted because you hated what you had to do to get there, or you'll get the goal like I did with 500, but because you value the goal far more than what you had to do to get the goal, you eventually stagnate or even regress back to like where you were before. And that's exactly what happened, right? Because I didn't take my powerlifting routine seriously. I didn't take my coaching seriously after reaching 500. I have always just stayed stuck ever since. And if I had taken that routine seriously, I probably would be deadlifting comfortably 600 plus pounds right now. And I guess the point of this is that, when we focus on the numbers, right? Just as how like when I focused on reaching 405 back 3 years ago, I was never able to get it. It felt like I was stuck, just like how Vegeta was stuck trying to be a Super Saiyan, but he just couldn't get it back in Dragon Ball Z. Same thing, right? But when we focus more on like the process, the steps, and how we could do better, we reach those numbers we set for ourselves and higher because now we're more process oriented than outcome based, right? And I think it's kind of an analogy, or I think I said this already, but it's like the man who likes walking will walk further than the one who walks just to go to his destination. And I think that's exactly life, right? With anything, whether it's weightlifting, the gym, YouTube, etc. It's the same, right? If you like what you do, you will get further, and you won't even realize those numbers are coming until after you did it. Versus if you're just doing it just for the numbers, just for the result, you're eventually gonna crash, right? And I think that was a perfect story that represented that. And again, my number is impressive. If you tell anybody or the average person that, they're going to be astounded. But for somebody who takes powerlifting really seriously and knows the mechanisms of what it's like to be a true powerlifting athlete, we know it's just the beginning. And we know it's the barrier of entry to someone who's just outcome based versus someone who's going to take the process to get to 550, 600, 700, so on. So yeah, just wanted to share that story and keep it real with you guys. And if you guys liked anything from this video, please share your comments down below. It really means a lot. And love to know more about your thoughts and what you're thinking. But if not, again, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. Really appreciate having you guys here. And if you would like more of these stories, please let me know. Thank you guys, and see you soon.